Okay, we'll start.
Okay, Bantiji, we are live.
Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Itipiso bhagavaraham samma sambuddho vidyacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisadamma sarati sattadeva manusanam buddho bhagavati namo tassa samma sambuddhassa. Swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehi passiko apanayiko pachatang veditabbo vinnuhiti namo tassa niyanika sadammasa supatipanno bhagavato savaka sango ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sango nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sango samichi patipanno bhagavato savaka sango yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa puggala esa bhagavato savaka sango ahuneyo pahuneyo dakkineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyaketang lokasati namo tassa atta arya puggala mahasangasa. So today we will have a small session. So this chanting part also, I just thought of avoiding, and just let us focus on this topic. And again, we compile that, just take highlights of the topic. Then maybe we can spend more time on the question answers. Or if there are no questions, then it is better to have a short session, completely focusing on the topic. The chanting and all, many suttas, many discourses already chanted and already explained. And in some talks, we focus only on the particular sutta, particular discourse, and then we elaborate on those things. Combining both the suttas and the topic will become too much. We can't justify both of them. So better stick on to our topic and just say focus on that. And if there are some good questions, then even while that interaction, Dhamma Sakacha also, a lot of in-depth understanding of that particular topic is possible. Let's say slightly there is a change in our approach to our Dhamma talks. Maybe some 20-25 minutes we will focus on this Dhamma topic, and there are some relevant questions, some 5-10 minutes. So in that way, we will make it 30 or 35 minutes, maximum 40-minute session. That is the idea. Now coming to our topic. So today's topic is about addictions and how the mindfulness, it will break that addiction pattern of the mind and thereby help to come out of these addiction patterns of the mind, and thereby it will help to help or prevent you from falling into the crisis that one will face because of addictions. An addiction which is like, it becomes severe, which becomes little chronic, then it becomes a crisis, is it not? So it will become a very big issue, very big crisis of the life. So how this mindfulness, it will help in coming out of this crisis of addictions, crisis of this chronic, deep, profound addictions that we will see, and how unmindfulness will make a person to fall into these addictions, fall into this compulsions of the mind, obsessions of the mind, addictions of the mind. Generally, we will focus on the addictions because that is today's topic. So how these addictions arise because of addictions will occur, will happen in someone's life, how a person become a victim to addictions because of unmindfulness. Those things we will see, and how by cultivating different mindfulness techniques, how a person can come out of addictions, how the mindfulness, the heedfulness, the watchfulness becomes a very powerful tool to come out of all kinds of addictions. That also we will see. And first we'll understand what are these addictions, what is the psychology of these addictions, what are the causes and the cues, the psychological approach of finding out the causes for addictions, and the scientific approach of handling addictions. For some 5 minutes we will see that aspect, that medical aspect also of addictions. Then we will see how unmindfulness will lead to addictions. Then we will see how mindfulness will act as a powerful tool to break this addiction cycles or addiction pathways or addiction dependence, the dependence on the addictive substances. So how to come out of that through this mindfulness practice, that also we will see. And different mindfulness approaches, how they will help in coming out of these addiction patterns of the mind. That also we will see. Now coming to these addictions, like generally people they get excited because of some of these sensual impressions to the 5 senses, and also from the mind itself, some thought patterns. You will be addicted to some thought patterns. You will be addicted to some visible objects. You will be addicted to some sounds. You can be addicted to some tastes, some smells. So most of the addictions that we talk about, that the medical world talks about, is all about the tastes and smells. And some addictions are of the bodily sensations, physical feelings. So all these addictions are the dependence, or the repetitive dependence, the repetitive or compulsive dependence or repetitive dependence of some of these inputs, some of these sense objects, like the physical sense objects, like the visible objects, like the tangible objects, like which will create sensations of the physical feelings in the body, or the mental feelings, the pleasant mental feelings, or the pleasant physical feelings, or the pleasant taste, the pleasant smells, or the pleasant sounds. So they are one kind of say addictions, and the very thought pattern that becomes an imprint in your mind, that again and again it appears, it comes to the surface, and again your mind will secrete some chemicals to those thoughts as a reaction to those thoughts. Then those chemicals will produce some kind of physical feelings or mental feelings, which your mind will wrongly perceive it, the wrong perception of those chemicals, of those thoughts, of those chemicals, of those physical feelings and mental feelings. Your mind will wrongly perceive or unmindfully perceive, and become starts craving for it again and again subconsciously or unconsciously, or without heedfulness, without mindfulness, without alertness, without sensitivity, with blindness, with dullness. Your mind starts reacting to it, your mind starts craving for it, and you can't come out of this vicious cycle of craving, reaction, unmindfulness, craving, reaction, unmindfulness. You get trapped into that vicious cycle. When you bring in this aspect of mindfulness into this vicious cycle of craving, reaction, and unmindfulness, substitute unmindfulness with mindfulness, then you can break this cycle of craving, repetitive craving, unmindful craving, unmindful reaction, that you can stop. And then you can come out of that addiction pattern of the mind. Hmm? So in that way, all our unmindful reactions and all our repetitive reactions that happen subconsciously many times without consciousness, without awareness, they will lead to the dependence on that particular sense impression, sense object that we perceive through our physical senses or even the mind sense. So that will make us to become the slaves to that kind of object, that kind of sense impression, that kind of taste, that kind of smell. When you're aware, when you're open, when you're objectively aware of that particular taste, particular smell, then you will not be carried away by that unmindfully, with unawareness, without watchfulness. You will not be carried away by that, because you will immediately understand in that very excitement of that particular chemical, particular taste, particular smell, the pleasure is momentary. That momentary pleasure always, it will fall down like a wave. Like a wave, it goes up and again it will fall down. The same way, this very pleasure, momentarily it goes, we will get that high of that pleasure, but it will not remain in that high. Immediately it will fall down like a wave. And there the disappointment, there the suffering, there the pain, immediately is the for the consequence of a very high is the fall only. The very excitement will lead to disappointment only. So if the mind is conscious, alert, awake, objectively conscious, then it can easily find out these highs and lows of the mind, which are caused by the so-called these substances or these say these external impressions, or even the internal impressions like your different thought processes, which you think they create high, they give me pleasure. But in reality, whatever pleasure they give, so it will always lead to disappointment also. All that highs lead to lows also. That awareness, that understanding, that knowledge you will get if you have this intelligence of mindfulness, this awareness intelligence, of this mindfulness intelligence you have, then your mind becomes quite alert, quite say sensitive, quite watchful, quite heedful, and it can note these high and low patterns of these excitements and disappointments that are caused by these so-called say addictive objects or addictive substances. Hmm? It's not just the substances we get addicted to. There are two kinds of addictions generally people talk about. One is the substance addiction. Other one is the behavioral addiction or non-substance addiction. Substance addiction, non-substance addiction. We can call this substance addiction as physical addiction also, chemical addiction also, because all these substances are like physically you are taking them, or they are like some chemicals. The physical form you're taking those chemicals, so you can call them as chemical addictions also. And there are some addictions which are non-chemicals or non-substances. They are non-physical. They're called behavioral addictions. Like, for example, gambling. Gambling, you're not taking any chemical like some alcohol or some intoxicant. You're not taking, and you're not get addicted to that intoxicant or alcohol or drug. Gambling is just one kind of behavior, one kind of say activity. You get addicted to it. Like mobile addiction nowadays, even the small kids, you might have seen, even 2 years, 3 years, small kids also, they get addicted to this mobile thing. They're not like say partaking or taking in any consuming any chemical like some drug addictions or alcohol addiction or say yeah, so many kinds of drugs or so many kinds of say the foods, so many kinds of food addictions, of sweet addiction, masala addiction, non-veg addiction. Of course, they are of minor, say, intensity or minor impact. This kind of food addictions, when compared to the severe addictions like your alcohol addiction, drug addiction, nicotine addiction, opium addiction. Hmm. So these addictions are cocaine addiction. These addictions, which are powerful drugs, they are considered as the severe addictions. But anything which you think that excites you, in a way, it is one kind of addiction, but the severity may vary. Hmm. Even some spiritual, religious addictions also. When you are dependent on that for your excitement, for your happiness, for your pleasure, then to some extent it is also an addiction. But it is not severe. Why? Why it is not severe? Because you can come out of that dependence quite easily. If you can't come out of any dependence quite easily, it becomes chronic and your dependence becomes chronic. Your dependence becomes very rigid. You can't escape from it, can't come out of it very easily. Then it is considered as a severe addiction, a profound addiction. So in that way, these addictions are of two kinds: the behavior addictions, addictions to some kind of behavior. There is a behavioral change in your activities and your lifestyle. uh, though you are not taking some chemicals, you're not consuming any chemicals, you're not dependent on consuming any chemicals, but still you're dependent on some activities like gambling, like watching mobiles, like say watching some illicit things in the mobiles, illegal, illicit, highly say exciting things, uh, like video games. People are addicted to video games. That's also has becoming a severe addiction, horrible addiction. Hmm. Pornography, all these things which are like becoming too rigid, and your mind is again and again dependent on that for your pleasure, and you can't come out of it. You become a slave for that. So that kind of change in your behavior, in your behavior pattern, that kind of addictions are called behavioral addictions. And again, they classify these substance addictions. Substance addiction and non-substance addiction. Non-substance addictions are nothing but your behavioral addictions, like all these, say this gambling or this mobile thing and all these things. And where you are consuming any substance, such kind of addictions are non-behavioral or non-substance addictions. And coming to these substance addictions, again, there are two kinds of substance addictions. Huh? They call it a substance abuse, substance addiction, chemical addiction, physical addiction. There are two kinds again. So what are they? Like the prescribed substance or the prescribed medicine addictions, or non-prescribed chemical addiction, non-prescribed substance addiction. Sometimes the doctors have to prescribe for some illnesses, for some diseases, sicknesses, whether the mental diseases or physical diseases. They prescribe some chemicals. They also have some kind of intoxication, some kind of, say, exciting ability. It excites your brain cells or your nervous system. It will release some kind of happy chemicals or happy hormones, some exciting hormones or exciting chemicals in your brain, and you get addicted to that, even though it is prescribed by the doctors or the physicians. So such kind of addictions are also there. They are called the prescribed chemical addiction or the prescribed drug addiction or medicine addiction. And there are non-prescribed medicine addictions like your say like your nicotines or foods or alcohol or intoxication or this kind of opium or cocaine. So all these things are non-prescribed. People get addicted to it because of its the chemicals present in those things, which excites your happy hormones, your brain cells, which in turn excite the happy hormones like dopamine. You might have, some of you might have heard of this. Uh, they released, they say, the doctors say, 10 times more than your ordinary pleasure situation. So if you are enjoying something, say some picnic or some kind of normal pleasures, the dopamine that is produced in your mind, let us say if it is 1 unit, but by taking this kind of chemicals like this nicotine, opium and all, then these happy hormones are these chemicals that are produced in the brain, which are responsible for your excitement, for your pleasure. Those chemicals will flow in the entire body. They create some kind of pleasant sensations also. And you again react to those pleasant sensations again unmindfully, and that kind of excitement again you create in your mind, that will again trigger a little more production of this dopamine, and you get trapped into that kind of unmindfulness, unmindful reaction, unmindful production of this dopamine, these chemicals, because you are not seeing the other face of it. You're seeing only, you're getting trapped with this unmindfulness, with this only that excitement aspect of those chemicals, not the other side, the other face, that is the fall, the low, the disappointment. If the mind is quite sharp and sensitive, it can easily see after every excitement there is disappointment, after every high there is a fall. That sharpness, that sensitivity will go away when you are unmindful, when you are highly reactive to this kind of chemicals, this kind of thoughts, unconscious thoughts, that it gives me pleasure. The same thought, if it is going on in your mind, then you become unmindful of what's happening in your brain, what's happening in your body, in the form of pleasantness or unpleasantness, in the form of the different chemicals that are producing in your brain. They create some kind of say, mental feelings. The pleasure feelings or displeasure feelings in the mind because of the production of these chemicals. And when they flow in the body, they create the pleasant sensations, the pleasant physical feelings, and immediately they create the unpleasant feelings also. But because of your excitement, your mind becomes clouded, your mind becomes insensitive. It can't watch the other face of this chemical flow, chemical movement, either in the mind or in the body. Because of that unmindfulness, because of the declouding of the mind for the production of these chemicals in the mind, for the sensations in the body, you become addicted to the so-called excitements, ignoring the other phase, that is the disappointment or the loss or the pain immediately that these chemicals create in both in the mind and also in the body, that you are unaware. So you get carried away by that only excitement, and you become a slave of that. You can't come out of that. You become completely dependent on it. Because the same thought process in your mind, that uh, reacting thought process, there is something called thought process. So I used to teach in these Abhidhamma classes. So in that thought process, because of unmindfulness, you get carried away in that. There is one continuous stream of thought process. Thought moments happen. It's called javana, the impulsion. All the compulsions lead to impulsions. And if it is like unmindful excitement, then that will go on repetitively. That stream of excitement will go on unconsciously, repetitively, and you can't break that repetitive excitement, which you think it is real pleasure, and you become a slave for that. You can't come out of that. Just like if there is some wound in your body, and because and it after while it is healing, you get when you some kind of itching. When you scratch it, you get addicted to that kind of scratching pleasure. But you don't know, after scratching there is a lot of pain also. But still you are carried away in that pleasure of scratching that wound. You don't know the consequence. The immediate consequence is the pain only, and you simply multiply that wound, or you just say, make that wound bigger by simply scratching it. But your unmindful, ignorant mind, it is looking at only the one side of the situation. That is only a little bit of excitement that you gain by scratching. Your mind is unaware of the other side, that is, the wound is becoming intense, it is severe, even the blood may come out. In the case of leprosy patients in the ancient days, they say the leprosy patients, even the blood is coming out of the wounds, they feel like scratching it on, because the little pleasure they get in that scratching of that wound, they don't mind even the blood comes. Even that very finger or that part of the body, it goes away, it falls down also, they don't mind. Only that scratching is important. That pleasure is important. Same thing is the problem with the addicts also. Because they can't see the situation in a holistic way, in a complete way. That means like they can't see the immediate consequence of that excitement, that pleasure. The immediate consequence is the pain also they're not in a position to see. They're completely beclouded by these chemicals, which simply keep you in that excited state. Though the undercurrent, the thought of pain, both in the mind, in the body, but your mind is not in a position to take note of it, make note of it. That is what is the problem with addictions. And all their lifestyle patterns, their behaviors, everything will change. You might have seen all addicts, their lifestyle, their intellectual ability, their focusing ability, uh, their behavior with others, their working efficiency, their emotional skillfulness, their emotional awareness, their say handling of their emotions. Everywhere they become failure, because it will affect all aspects of human life, because it affects all aspects or all components of the human mind, its own mind. Hmm? So because of that reason, so addictions are becoming one of the biggest problems. And why these addictions happen? Because of so many reasons. Because of continuous stress, people fall into some kind of excitements, some kind of pleasures. Then they become victim, prey to these addictive substances. Because of some traumas, the people become addicts to come out of that kind of trauma. And if there is a history, the family history of is there for addictions, then there is a possibility of becoming addicts. And to come out of the failures and disappointments in their life, again, the people become addicts. The societal impact also make the people addicts. That way, there are several reasons why people become addicts, and also these easygoing people. Thus, they want to experiment with everything. Thus, they want to keep on hunting for the pleasures. Such people also, because of their say irresponsible way of living, not having some proper say focus in the life. Such people also, they get carried away with this kind of excitements or pleasures, and they also become the victims of addictions. The weak personality, the weak willpower, the easygoing people, irresponsible. They have taken the life very easily, very casually, and irresponsible parents, irresponsible childhood because of irresponsible parents. All these things may become the reason for becoming prey to or victims to these addictions. Then, as I was telling, in between this cause of addictions, different kinds of addiction, how this unmindfulness is the key reason of, say, that reactiveness, that repetitiveness, that cloudiness, that incomplete observation of the situation. So I was mentioning this unmindfulness, how it leads to this kind of repetitiveness in your thought patterns, in your thought process, in the Abhidhamma. The consciousness is a stream. In that stream of consciousness, one's consciousness pushing the other consciousness. If you are not alert, if you're not mindful, then the previous consciousness, the nature of the previous consciousness is followed in the present consciousness also. If you are not mindful, then if you are simply reacting to some kind of excitement, consciousness, if you are unmindful, the same thing will remain in the next consciousness. It's called, like, say, as I used to say, that impulsions, the Javana process, the repetitive impulsions. If you are unmindful, then they carry the same, say, the opinion in your mind. So it is exciting, that only it gets carried. Though little subconsciously you're experiencing a lot of pain, both physical pain and mental pain. Because of that unmindfulness, you get carried away in that stream of consciousness and you simply feel it is quite exciting. So once you bring in this aspect of mindfulness, then automatically with that chain of that stream of consciousness is carried away with this excitement, is broken. And then you can start seeing the things in a more realistic way. You can start noting the subconscious or the below conscious, or that say that carried away, the mind which is carried away. So that carrying away is stopped, and you start looking at the physical pain and mental pain that is associated with that excitement. You'll start noting it and you become mindful. Okay. So mindfulness can be developed in so many ways. At the outset, you can develop mindfulness at the very inception, the very bombarding of the external object to your sense. So, like, say that, like the taste, very taste or very smell, like alcohol smell or alcohol taste, that very impact, that very contact of the alcohol taste or alcohol smell, at that moment itself, if you are mindful, then you will not be carried away unmindfully with that excitement, the so-called imprint in your mind that has been created, thinking it repeatedly, it is exciting, something like that. Even though it has created a little bit of excitement, but unmindfully you are reacting to it with that same notion of excitement. It is because of unmindfulness, and that will produce some kind of the chemical in your brain, as I was telling you, like this dopamine, a happy hormone, let us say. So again, it will produce in larger amounts, as I was telling. So it may be sometimes 10 times more than its normal production, and because of its larger, that gush of production, that is called dopamine pathway or substance circuit or substance pathway that happens in the brain. So it will again make you more unmindful. Again, you will be carried away because the mind will be under the influence of that substance that is created in the brain. Because again, the reason is like the external input, like some alcohol or some drug that you have taken. It will help in secreting more dopamine in the brain. And both these chemicals, it will completely becloud your mind. The chemical from the external, from your, say, through your senses that you are going to take, and which in turn produce the chemicals in the brain, the happy hormones, the happy chemicals in the brain, like this dopamine. So the influence of these two kinds of chemicals, it will completely becloud you. It will completely make you more dull, more unmindful. So in the very first level itself, if you are watchful, if you are mindful, then the production of dopamine, instead of 10 times, it may produce maybe some 2 times or 3 times. The very first check itself, if you can become mindful, That is when the chemical, when some taste of the alcohol, taste of the drug, or smell of the drug, very beginning of the sense impression on your senses. If you are mindful, it will prevent a lot of this, say, this unconscious reaction and getting trapped into that kind of unconscious excitement. And again, if you are mindful of your thought process, so how I'm getting excited, this excitement is going on. If you are mindful of that, your thoughts and your say your pleasantness in the mind because of the production of those chemicals. If you are mindful of both those thoughts and that pleasant sensations in the mind because of the production of these chemicals, then again lot of this unconscious reaction to this whatever excitement, it will again come down, become more and more equanimous. Here at the first level, to some extent, you become equanimous. The second level, by observing the thoughts, by being aware of the thoughts, being mindful of the thoughts. Oh, this is happy. Oh, this is happy. In that way, if you are unmindfully, you are repeating this thought process of, so I'm getting excited, that thought. And because of that, more and more chemical is producing and it is creating some kind of pleasantness. You're not looking completely into that aspect of pleasantness of that chemical production in the mind. If that also you're watching and observing and you're mindful of that and become more and more equanimous, more and more holistic in your observation. That is what is this mindfulness. That is what is mindfulness training. And again, the production of this so-called chemicals, it will come down, to reduce, and it will flow in the body. Again, which will create some kind of temporary pleasant sensations that will also come down. And again, unmindfully, you may not react to those pleasant sensations or pleasant physical feelings. And again, if you are mindful to those pleasant feelings of the body, not just the pleasant feelings of the mind and the pleasant thoughts, even the pleasant feelings of the body, if you are becoming mindful, then you can completely handle this, the complete process, the complete journey of these, say, addictive substances. Addictive substances, starting from your senses and your thought reactions, the reaction to those chemicals which are placed on your sense organs, and then and its reaction in the mind, the brain, as the production of some happy hormones in the form of, let us say, dopamine and all, the cortisol, dopamine, some stress hormones, some happy hormones. So they are produced as a result of some of these chemicals that you take. If you are not aware of this, the stress hormones and happy hormones, the stress chemicals and happy chemicals that are produced in the mind, then without any say control, they keep on producing. The main thing is actually the thoughts. If you are not aware of the thoughts, you're simply reacting to that kind of external chemical or internal chemical without being, it's happy, it is exciting. In that way, if you are reacting to those thoughts, the thought of excitement, if you're unmindful, you react to that thought again with excitement. So in that way, you get trapped with that kind of stream of consciousness where a little bit of excitement is an integral part. So if you become more aware, you can be aware of these repetitive thoughts of excitement, repetitive production of these chemicals, internal chemicals, and its impact on the body, the repetitive pleasant sensations of pleasant feelings also. You can become mindful and you can see every pleasant sensation will disappear immediately and it will become sometimes unpleasant, sometimes simply it will vanish, it will become neutral. So that kind of awareness, if you develop more and more by becoming more and more objective, more and more sharp, more and more sensitive with all the five physical senses and also through the mental sense, if you learn this art of becoming more and more aware, then this the so-called excitement, the so-called temporary pleasures, and getting carried away in these temporary pleasures and excitement, that chain will be broken. And then you can escape from this trap of addictions. Addictions because of external chemicals, internal chemicals, the thoughts, the physical, mental feelings, or the physical feelings. So all these things you will become more and more aware, and then your addiction to any one of these, it will lead to say the complete addiction. So if you are developing this overall mindfulness, then you can break this addictive mindset at any one of these points, at the level of senses itself, at the level of mind itself, at the level of thought process itself, at the level of mental feelings, at the level of physical feelings. All these levels, you can break this repetitive chain, this continuity chain you can break. That is the power of mindfulness. So in mindfulness, you develop what is called one superior pleasure, one superior happiness. This exciting happiness is very, very inferior. Why it is inferior? Because it is momentary. It is like a wave, as I was telling you. It is only one moment the wave will go up. The second moment it will go down. So that is the nature of these sensual pleasures, or these chemicals that will give you pleasure, or these even the behavioral addictions like your gambling, your mobile addiction, the video games, all these behavioral addictions. Other than the chemical addictions, maybe your alcohol addiction, your drug addiction, your say your food addiction, your nicotine addiction. Even there are some very peculiar addictions nowadays. Even there is addiction for, I heard there is plastic surgery. People are becoming addicted to, so once you go through one kind of plastic surgery of one of your body part, then you think of going for plastic surgery for another body part. It has, in some cases, that is also one kind of addiction. That's what I heard. And addiction to, say, tattoos. Addiction. Once you go through one tattoo on your body, then you feel like you're repeating it, going for different kinds of tattoos, different parts of the body. So all these things, they come under behavioral patterns. In all these patterns, in all these addictions, the addictive patterns, what is one thing that is going on? Your unmindfulness, and your unmindfulness to the temporary happiness, temporary excitement, which you think it as pleasure, and your unmindfulness reaction to it in the mind also, in the subconscious mind also, that gives me happiness. Automatically, so consciously, it creates a lot of problem, but you, in the subconsciousness, that imprint is so strong that the thought process also, it is the subconscious thought process also, it is craving for that same pleasure, same temptation, same excitement. Though consciously you know little bit about its consequences, you feel like avoiding it, but that unconscious or subconscious thought process, it has become already the slave for that. It will pull you towards the same behavioral change, that behavioral addiction, or for the same chemical. In that way, when you become more and more aware, more and more mindful, more and more watchful, develop these different kinds of mindfulness techniques, then not only at the conscious level, you develop more authority of its implications, its impact of these, the so-called temporary excitement. It will automatically, that consciousness, that awareness, that mindfulness will percolate to your subconscious also, where your subconscious mind is addicted to that kind of excitement. It will also start realizing the consequences, the negative impact of these so-called addictions. There also, you start opening up that kind of say that kind of unconscious say dependence, unconscious dependence, the unconscious thought process, which is dependent on this addictive substance. There also you can become, you can just penetrate into that subconscious thought process also. There also we can liberate that subconscious thought process from the implications, the impact, the ill consequences of depending on that kind of addictive substance. What I mean to say here is, if you develop more and more mindfulness, both at the conscious level and at the subconscious level, your understanding becomes more and more deeper, your clarity becomes more and more refined, and your dependence becomes lesser and lesser on these addictive substances, because you start realizing both consciously and unconsciously about the ill effects, about the suffering, about the slavery, about the dependence, and thereby the suffering that you are going to face, the pain, both physical pain and bodily pain and the mental pain. So you can penetrate into this ignorance, into this dependence, only through this mindfulness. Okay. So in that way, mindfulness is the master medicine, is the master cure, is the master management strategy for all addictions. So because of that reason, in addition to so many behavioral therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, there also a little bit of mindfulness. People have started, teaching to these addicts. And also there is one direct mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. That also will help these so-called these different kinds of addicts to understand, to see the picture, to see the complete picture, to see the complete canvas, complete picture of the ill effects of these so-called excitements and how they lead to disappointments and the loss, and how it becomes repetitive, how mind consciously and unconsciously becomes a slave, starts depending on it. All this complete picture, it starts opening up. Oh, that's only through mind. That is possible only through this right mindfulness cultivation. Because mindfulness only it will open up your mind to see the picture completely, to see the situation completely, to see the pleasures and these sufferings, how they go together. That picture is clean correctly only through uh, this power, these mindfulness techniques, mindfulness practices. That's why some spiritual masters, they say, risk everything for the sake of awareness, risk everything for the sake of mindfulness, developing the mindfulness. For that, you can risk everything of your life, because that is so precious. And so many masters, they daringly declare that I am here um, to just teach you mindfulness, just teach you awareness, to make you aware, to make you awake, not to surrender to me, or not to surrender to something, not to make you a blind person. I'm here to awaken. I'm here to say make you more mindful. In that way, many masters they declare. So in that way, understand the importance of mindfulness, importance of right mindfulness, right view, objective mindfulness, and develop uh, your lot of inner dimensions of the mind, inner powers of the mind, and come out of this nasty, useless, chronic, this addictive say, uh, patterns of the mind, for so many addictive substances, whether they're chemical addictions or behavioral addictions. Even in the behavioral addictions also, though you're not consuming the chemicals from outside, those behaviors, those say activities, they create some kind of addictive chemicals in your mind. they trigger the production of some addictive chemicals in your mind, like these happy hormones or these dopamines or this kind of temporary pleasure creating chemicals in your mind. So all this is the game of chemicals, whether it is the substance addiction or whether it is behavioral addiction. But finally, it is the game of chemicals of your brain secretions, which in turn is again because of your the thought process. If your thought process is repetitively, unconsciously, it is simply starts craving the temporary excitement. I like this, it is good. If you're not aware of your thoughts also, then it becomes we become addicted to that thought process, that emotion also. In addition to that chemical, and that chemical, it creates some kind of pleasant mental feelings, and it produce physical feelings also. You become again, if you're unmindful, again you become addicted to those mental feelings and to these physical feelings also. You don't see those pleasant mental feelings, pleasant physical feelings. Immediately they turn into unpleasant mental feelings and unpleasant physical feelings that your mind can't comprehend. Your mind can't see, first of all, then it can't comprehend. To see this complete picture, then your awareness should increase, your mindfulness should increase, your watchfulness, your heedfulness should increase. That's what we teach in our right view meditation courses. So in all possible ways, how one can develop this right view mindfulness, this right view objective mindfulness, to physical senses at the very first stage itself, observing the thoughts, observing the mental feelings, observing the physical feelings, all these different kinds of observation. It will make you more mindful, more aware, more conscious, more alert, more heedful, and that will give you the clear picture of this impact of addictive substances, addictive chemicals, whether they are internal addictive chemicals or you consume from through your senses. Externally, you consume through your senses. Whatever may be the chemical, so you will start say noting the complete picture of its impact on your body and your mind, on your sensations, on your feelings, your physical feelings, mental feelings, your thought process. All these levels, you can become more alert, more clear, more comprehensive of the action of these uh, external chemicals or internal chemicals. So that is the role of mindfulness. Mindfulness not just at the level of say your awareness through the senses, through the mind, the mental objects or the physical objects, the sense objects, being aware of those things through these mindfulness meditations, mindfulness techniques, through these awareness techniques. That is definitely directly hit your awareness levels, increase your awareness levels. In addition to that, even by cultivating the wholesome feelings, the wholesome emotions like the loving kindness, like compassion, like appreciative joy, like the equanimity meditation, the upeka, the four Brahma Viharas also, it indirectly increases your mindfulness, your awareness, your heedfulness. It will reduce a lot of your addiction to your say your headfulness in the mind, your addiction to your greed in the mind, your addiction to your hatred in the mind, your addiction to your ignorance, your sleepiness, your laziness. These things can be cut. These things can be controlled, reduced, of course, with a lot of awareness techniques, mindfulness techniques, meditation techniques, objective meditation, right view meditation techniques. Even with this right view feelings, right view emotions like metta, karuna, mudita, upekta, from these things also indirectly you can curb your addictive pattern of the mind towards hatred, towards greed. That will also reduce, and thereby your awareness levels will increase. That is the second component of the mind that many of you have gone through our meditation courses, learned. So those things also will increase your mindfulness, and they will also come to your rescue to come out of this kind of addictions, different kinds of addictions. If you become very compassionate to yourself, your own body, your own mind, your own people around you, then there is a possibility of you to come out of your addictions. It has to be developed to a higher degree, this compassion, this loving kindness, this appreciative mudita, equanimity. And all this mindfulness, whether it is awareness, mindfulness, or whether it is your emotional mindfulness, they will take you to higher levels of equanimity, our higher levels of stillness, equanimity, balance, calmness, openness, alertness, will take to those higher levels. Even these feelings, if they are cultivated properly, these wholesome feelings like metta, karuna, mudita, upekka, then it will take you to that higher level of equanimity, upekka. So that happiness, that upekka sukha, if you can able to grasp the taste of that upekka sukha, that samatha sukha, or the happiness of equanimity, happiness of stillness, happiness of balance, happiness of purity, happiness of equanimity, then all these exciting happiness, you find this happiness as very, very insignificant, very, very cheap. If you have understood the superior happiness of, say, the pleasantness or the lightness, the freeness in the body, then all the happiness that you obtain through scratching your wound or some silly, very temporary happinesses of the body, that you find it very, very insignificant, very, very troublesome, very, very dangerous also. So the samatha sukh or the happiness of equanimity, if you start tasting even the first taste, even a glimpse of it, if you start experiencing the happiness of equanimity, then all these exciting happinesses, which immediately lead to some kind of disappointment and some kind of loss. Immediately, you will understand its limitations, the limitations of these exciting happinesses, essential happiness, or this exciting chemicals happiness, all these things, you simply throw it out, kick it out, like like uh, uh, like say some kind of just like a wise person, he kicks out all these temporary happiness like alcohol, like exciting sensual pleasures, immoral sensual pleasures. He just kick it out because he knows that this kind of things will give me temporary happiness, momentary happiness. Later, it will bring a lot of suffering only. That's what a wise person comprehends with regard to this kind of exciting happiness. That's why he is wise, and that wisdom is rooted in his awareness, his mindfulness. His mindfulness is developed and has been developed, or it was developed with this different mindfulness techniques, or with these wholesome feelings, or with logical thinking itself. Your analytical awareness, also analytical intelligence, also make you a little bit aware. It will also increase your awareness. So that's where the role of this Dhamma talks, say these teachings, all these things will come to your rescue of analyzing the things and then getting some clarity of what is true happiness, what is say false happiness, what is relatively permanent happiness, what is impermanent happiness, what is superior happiness, what is cheap or inferior happiness. So that clarity also you will start getting. So in this art of letting go, instead of simply craving is also one kind of addiction. That is the biggest addiction. People are very much addicted to this excitement of craving. That very craving excites you to some extent, and people are trapped to that craving excitement or that craving pleasure. So instead of that, if your mind comprehends the giving and giving up, there is a superior pleasure, and that makes me more diligent, and that makes me more say into this doing, that giving leads to to the giving attitude, leads to the doing attitude, and that makes me more intelligent, more energetic, more skillful in my actions, and but then I start getting the fruits of my actions more effectively, more say in more abundance. So if that's knowledge, that analytical intelligence, analytical awareness, if you develop, then that will also add up to your mindfulness. You'll become more mindful of your body, of your mind, of your inputs, of your intakes, and your confidence of your responsibility of your work, the other aspect, other component of the mind that many of you have gone through our different levels. The confidence component of the mind, having some responsibility in the life, having proper goal in the life, aim in the life, and working for that more skillfully, more enthusiastically, more passionately, then there is no time for you to get excited with these substances, external substances, and get carried away by that. There will be no time for you because that very goal is exciting you to a greater level, to a higher level, and that is making you more equanimous also in handling the situations around you, and that is giving you more happiness, more thrill. In that way, so handling these four faculties of the mind that many of you are going through, all these things will increase your mindfulness, and thereby it will help you to come out of any damn addiction. So that is about the importance of mindfulness to come out of any kind of this addictive patterns of the mind, addictive patterns in your behavior, and thereby free from the ill effects of any kind of addiction. So I taught this eating meditation. By learning eating meditation, then you become more watchful of all the tastes and all the smells that are going through your nose sense and tongue sense. So all these alcohols, drugs, they create this kind of say this unmindful observation of tastes and smells that will only make you to get addicted to this kind of say taste and smell of these addictive agents, addictive substances. And once they're consumed and they start working on the mind and they start producing the chemicals, again you are unmindful of how these chemicals are produced in a gush, in bigger intense quantity, and how it is simply dulling your mind. It is beclouding your mind. If you are unaware of that, then you don't see its implications in a realistic way, in a holistic way. So at all levels, even with the eating meditation itself, you can come out of lot of this addictive patterns of the mind to different smells, tastes. After all these chemicals they create some taste and smells. Your alcohol or your foods or your drugs, they create some kind of taste and smells. The very first say entry into the body, that is on the tongue and the nose. There itself, if you are conscious, if you are mindful, then you can comprehend its impact, the impact of that chemical, and you can simply ignore it, simply keep away yourself from that chemical. And if you develop higher levels of mindfulness, then you can see its impact on the mind, its impact on the body, its impact on the thought process. All levels you can see. Then you can easily come out of its influence on you, your body and your mind and your thought process and your senses. You can check, you can prevent because of your mindfulness. Mindfulness is a very, very powerful tool which you can develop through all these awareness meditation, also through these different techniques of handling the other aspects of the mind. So if you want to come out of all this kind of addictive weaknesses, then develop mindfulness. You're welcome to join our right view meditation programs. Of course, again in April we have series of these courses. You can join to develop this develop the abilities of mindfulness in all aspects for all these four components of the mind. All these weaknesses to get carried away by these addictive substances or addictive behaviors. Okay, I think with this we'll conclude. If you have some questions, quick questions, you can ask. And then with small chanting, we'll conclude. Any questions? नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा भवतु सब्बमङ्गलं रक्कन्तु सब्बदेवता सब्बबुद्धानुभावेन सब्बधम्मानुभावेन सब्बसङ्घानुभावेन सदा स्वस्ति भवन्तु ते सुखी भवेयं निर्दुःखो अहं निच्चा अहं विया विदाचा मे सुखी होन्तु मज्जता चतवेदिनो मामिगम्मन्ते धम्मे सत्ता होन्तु सुखी सदा अतो परञ्चारज्येषु चक्रवालेषु चिन्तनो sadhu sadhu. May all of you be happy, healthy and peaceful. May all beings also be happy. Oh, there is one question, sorry. Namaste Banteji, asking to clarify my understanding. Are behaviors like going off or exercise also a kind of addiction? When the mind gets used to it, the mind needs to keep the mind needs it to keep going and feeling good. Yeah, in a way, these things, as I was telling you, they are relatively less addictive. The addictions also, like based on the intensity of the dependence on it, that makes something as addictive or not addictive. And also its repercussions, its impact. If you go to this, say, exercise, this workout, let us say, every day, and if you overdo it with your enthusiasm because of your because the excitement that you derive from that activity, if it exceeds, it's also dangerous. It may become more dangerous than your alcohol addiction or something like that sometimes. But if you are too much dependent on that, the other dependence you can say you should measure, and based on that you can decide whether I'm addicted to this or not. If you are less dependent but simply interested, it gives you some kind of freeness, some kind of lightness, some kind of freshness in the body, some kind of comfort in the body and mind. So it frees your mind, frees your body, and you're not very much dependent on it. Then you can say that you're not the victim, you have not fallen prey to it. Then it's okay. But if you are too much dependent on it, so without that you can't do any other thing in your life, then you should be little careful. So if you develop this right view mindfulness, right view meditation, you can easily come out of any kind of thought pattern, any kind of physical feelings or the mental feelings, which you think it is like it is pleasurable, it is like it is very lightning, very pleasant. So from that feeling, from that thought process, is that you can easily come out with this mindfulness training. Okay, but coming to your question, so like say this exercise, not only even exercise, workout, regular workout. People are so much dependent on that. To some extent, we should be mindful. That's why I teach here some Kriya Yoga, some mind-body coordination movements, again with mindfulness, so that you should not be carried away with whatever the pleasantness that you experience in your body by doing some exercise. I tell many of the yoga practitioners or these The people who go to gymnastics or do the workout regularly, do everything mindfully. Don't do with some kind of say unmindfulness, or don't repeatedly do this with some kind of force, with some kind of pressure. If you do even some physical work with some pressure, you feel some kind of excitement, some kind of thrill, some kind of comfort in the body, and don't be a slave for that again. So the same thing holds good here in your question also. So you should observe what's going on in your body, what's going on in your mind, even while exercising. Then it becomes a very good way of taking care of your body, taking care of your, even the religious practices. If you keep on chanting some mantra or some hymn or something like that, so it also calms down your mind. But when you become so much dependent on that, so then it creates some problem again. When you develop some kind of disinterest, when there is a situation where you can't do that, then you start feeling lot of say agony, lot of depression, lot of pain, mental pain and physical pain. So in that way, all these, most of the things that human mind is say doing and deriving pleasure, uh, in somewhere the other way, it has some kind of addictive pattern. But if you become more and more and more mindful, all these dependence, maybe because of your wrong view, maybe because of some excitement, some pleasure that you are deriving, so it will keep on melting, and you then start experiencing the happiness of equanimity, the happiness of stillness, the happiness of nothingness, the happiness of balance, the happiness of purity, the happiness of letting go. You start experiencing. Then your dependence will come down, keep on reducing. So to summarize what I have said now as an answer to your question, there are some very, very intense addictive patterns which will produce large amounts of dopamine, like consuming these chemicals like alcohols, nicotine, and all. From that kind of intense addictions, one should come out of that kind of intense addictions, and one can follow the less intense activities like this, the religious activities, or this exercise, or walking, or all these things, yoga, all these things. And even those things, this should not become like they should not become so much dependent on them. Then again, you bring in the higher levels of mindfulness. You practice all these things, even the religious practice. Do it with more mindfulness. Whatever you do, religious puja or religious practices or chantings, any religious ceremonies, everything you start doing more mindfully, and even these physical fitness exercises and activities, which are which produce less exciting chemicals in the mind, but still there is a possibility of depending on them. So there you bring in more and more mindfulness. Then it will give you both this physical fitness, and also it will make your mind free from depending on it. Then see, after some time, when you become 60 or 70 years, you can't practice all these exercise or physical fitness things. Then you should depend on your mental fitness only. So to develop that mental fitness from now itself, better practice these mindfulness things. Then dependence on the body, dependence, physical fitness also will become less, because you are mentally fit. That mental fitness will take care of your physical fitness also. But now, of course, definitely you can practice all these exercises, physical fitness, all these things, but bring in this aspect of mindfulness also bit by bit. Then it will take care of both your body and mind in a more effective way. Then also, can meditation be considered a kind of addiction if you feel like doing it regularly? Yes, in a way. Even the meditation becomes an addiction if you are so much dependent on that. That's because of that reason only. So how to be mindful at all the time? The mind is there, then the mindfulness should also be there. If that kind of skill you learn, then dependence on meditation also will reduce. But again, as I was telling you with regard to the physical fitness, even for some time if you spend on your mental fitness with proper right view meditations, then you can't become dependent on that. If you are dependent on some chanting meditation which excites you again to some extent, then there is a higher possibility of depending on that kind of subjective meditation. But in objective meditation, because you are bringing in lot of mindfulness in objective meditations, then the dependence on that will reduce, because that very objectivity will continue in your other day-to-day activities that you have learned, that you have practiced in meditation. The same attitude, that same objective approach, it will continue in your day-to-day activities also. That way, there is a lesser chance of becoming addictive to meditation when you are practicing the right view meditations. Then, Vandami Banteji, sometimes in spite of showing consequences of addiction, person is not ready to leave as they are having much negative approach towards self and others. How to remove this negativity? Yeah, this is like, say, you should take up this integrated approach, like self-love, like say with this metta, karuna, mukta, upekka, this wholesome feeling meditation. Many people, they are like more emotional. When you ask them to practice mindfulness, which is more objective, which is more rational, and which requires some training, people may not have so much of patience and so much of say even that basic intelligence to appreciate and accept this mindfulness techniques. Then such people who are little emotional, they should be handled with emotions only, the right view emotions, right emotions, like the metta, karuna, mudita, upekka. So it may work in some cases where they can come out of this negative approach towards themselves. That self-love may start, and then that self-compassion also will start. Then they start taking care of themselves. Then they will start thinking of how they can take care of themselves more effectively by practicing other mindfulness techniques, other confidence building techniques, other right analytical awareness techniques, or analytical intelligence, like what is good, what is intelligence of what is beneficial, what is not beneficial. Their minds will start opening up. Different channels of the mind will start opening. So that kind of integrated approach, that's what we have taken up in our meditation courses also. Because as I used to say, the different locks need different keys. You can't use the same key to open all the locks. So the same way for different temperaments, there are different mindfulness approaches. For some people, this emotional mindfulness may be more easy, like this metta, karuna, mudita, upekka. Directly it will hit their negative emotions and it will make them more positive towards themselves, towards the life, and they can open up to other aspects of mindfulness also once their emotional mindfulness is open. That way, that integrated approach is always better to handle people, to handle such kind of negative people. Vandami Venerable Pantaji, addiction of negativeness is possible to remove. Yeah, the same question and the answer is also same. Addiction of negativeness, yeah, always negative thinking, suspecting one's own self-worth, self-blaming, I'm useless, or something is useless, that is not useless, that is not useful. In that way, always problem-looking, negative thinking, people are addicted to that also. That is also very much there. That is one of the biggest addictions in the world. In the name of rationality, people are becoming nowadays very negative also. They completely lack that integrated approach, holistic approach towards the situations. They only see the problems. They only see the negative aspect. They only see the dark side. They can't see the bright side. So in such kind of situations, such kind of negative thinking addictions, negative thinking addicted people. So one should work with these positive emotions, positive also feelings like this. For some people, this these meditations like observing their own emotions, observing their own negativities, like observing their own, say, their own hateful nature, hateful mind. Now my mind is full of hatred, full of resistance, full of negativity, full of reaction, full of boredom. So that kind of observing the mind itself directly, observing the negative thinking directly, like just like in your Chitanupasana, that kind of meditations which will help in some cases who are thinking too much negative, who are habituated to negative thinking, who are addicted to negative thinking. For some people, the wholesome positive feelings like metta, substituting the negative things with these positive feelings like metta, that will be very useful. It may work for such people, for some kind of negative thinking people. That way, this holistic approach, integrated approach is the best approach. In the name of mindfulness, don't stick on to dogmatically. I've seen in some many meditation, dogmatic. They think only observing only this, observing only the breath, that will liberate you. That is in few cases, not for everyone. And also in few cases, to some extent it may work and later it may not work. And observing only sensation, that will liberate you from all the ills of the life. That way, some people keep that kind of dogma in their mind. And they work years and years, decades and decades, and they become more and more negative only. They don't progress in awareness, they don't progress in mindfulness. That kind of, say, skewed mindfulness practices or distorted or dogmatic mindfulness practices, one should be a little careful. So just like you are asking the questions about this negative thinking, negative. So observing the thoughts itself, observing the different sense objects, sense impressions in all possible ways. And there's so many meditation, mindfulness meditation techniques out there. So when you approach them, when you approach your mind with all these different ways and means, then one of them will definitely click for almost all kinds of temperaments. And one of them will definitely match, will not only click, it may definitely match with all kinds of temperaments. And there's a higher possibility of progressing in mindfulness if you take up this integrated approach. That's what you are going through in this right view meditation courses. Okay, I think so. They're good questions. All of you have asked good questions. So now, of course, we don't have time. Some of you are attending our Abhidhamma classes and Vishuddhimagga classes, practice sessions during that time. Also, you can ask questions. So now we will conclude with small chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena sada sotti bhavantu te sukhi bhaveyang nidduko aham nicca aham viya idacha me sukhi hontu majjata chatavedino imam gammante dhamme satta hontu sukhi sada tato parancarajyesu chakkavale sujantano sadhu sadhu sukhi hontu. May all of you be happy and well, healthy and peaceful. Progress in this path of mindfulness, the right view mindfulness, the integrated mindfulness. May all of you come out of all the ills, the life which cause suffering. May all of you be happy and well. Sukhi hontu.